Hi, welcome to today's conversation again. I'm with my very good friend, Mr. Luiz from Brazil. How are you, Mr. Luiz?
I'm fine. How are you?
Very well.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Luiz is a researcher and is focused on renewable energy.
Yeah.
So you've been doing so much work on renewable energy.
Yes.
How far have you gone?
How far in China for almost 6 months?
Okay.
6 months, yes, because of my field work here.
Yeah.
But I've been researching since the second year in my PhD in
Oh,
Brazil.
oh,
I
interesting.
started studying nuclear energy.
Oh,
I
really?
qualified for nuclear energy security,
Wow.
focusing on China and energy security in Eurasia.
Oh, okay.
When I arrived here, my supervisor asked me if I wanted to broaden my perspective
Yeah.
for renewables, including wind and solar.
Oh,
So
okay.
I did it, and I'm
And
researching now a
you're,
broader perspective.
wow. So you're enjoying it now,
Yes, it's much better.
right? Okay. Fine. Renewable energy is a big topic globally now.
Yeah.
That's a subject of international discourse. So, why do you think now so much attention is on renewable energy?
I believe that now we are paying much attention to renewable energy because we didn't pay attention at the right time. Because at least officially, we are talking about this since 1992, when the first international meeting was held in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. So nothing of these things that are happening now were happening at that time.
Mm,
We didn't have a global warming on this scale. We didn't have the melting of polar regions in such a scale. We didn't have the rising of the oceans because of the melting down of the polar regions in such a big scale. But we had the warnings that it could happen. And
and
it's happened now.
we didn't pay attention to those signals.
No, when we had many Paris conferences, many climate conferences, and the world didn't pay attention. I can't say the world, but I can say the people with the power to do
Mm,
something.
yeah. So now people are compelled to go that route now. Brazil is one of the largest economy in Americas. I think the second largest, and the renewable energy, I believe, it accounts for about 83% of your energy in Brazil. So, but in spite of that, Brazil has not been able to transit to full scale renewable energy. What do you think is responsible for that?
Well, in fact, Brazil is now the first one in Latin America and Caribbean. Our matrix, our energy matrix, is mostly renewable
Mm,
because of hydroelectricity,
yeah.
biomass, and gas, natural gas, especially from Bolivia. And our matrix is very big in renewable energy, but we don't include wind and solar.
Mm,
Wind is older in our matrix,
yeah.
solar is struggling, and the big problem is the incumbent sector. The people that are in charge of hydroelectricity, biomass, and gas, they
Yeah.
see wind and power and solar as a threat to their
To your business,
financial,
of course.
yeah, to their financial business.
Wow. But in real sense, renewable energy also brings so much money to the table. So why are people not looking at the business angle of it and just focusing on the traditional energy sources?
Uh, that is one of my hypotheses in my thesis. It's the two hypotheses, in fact, because one of them is based on these incumbent sectors. They see the wind and the solar as a threat,
Yeah.
and without wind and without solar, you don't have a real renewable energy matrix. because they, especially solar, can be used in small grids. Without these small grids of energy, just like we see in the university, we see around Beijing, I saw in Shanghai and many other places. Without these small grids connecting to the big grids of energy, we don't have renewable matrix. This is the first hypothesis. And the problem is they see as a threat, economic threat, and the logistics and the structures are long gone made for hydropower and biomass. So you have to change this, you have to change institutionally, structurally, and you have to have the money. Brazil has the resources, the natural resources. Brazil has the money because it's the biggest receptor of Chinese money, and China invests in energy heavily in Brazil. And Brazil receives more money than all Latin American Caribbean countries together. Brazil receives more money than Belt and Road Initiative partners of China, even though Brazil is not officially in Belt and Road, but because 1993 strategic partnership we have, Brazil and China, we received this money. And Brazil received the biggest money of China from 2009 to 2021. And our matrix is bigger than OECD countries and bigger than even of the some other countries that invest in renewables. But the problem is the structure. To change the structure, first we have to change the institutional. We have to change the the laws. The laws we have, they are strong, but we have to implement these laws to make this work. Without the law, the institutional arrangements working in pro renewables, we don't have a real renewable energy transition. We have renewable resources, we have renewable matrix, but we don't have a transition.
Wow, that's you alluded to institutional issues, political will
Yeah,
to transit.
yeah,
Of course, you also highlighted the resources needed to put that in place.
yes,
Of course, renewable energy is complementary to the traditional source
of
of
course.
energy. And as regards the structural issues, do we have to make away totally of the traditional structures before building renewable? Can't that be complementary? And with time, the business angle will begin to look at the more profitable and acceptable, sustainable forms of energy rather than uh, looking at changing the structure entirely.
Yes.
What do you think?
Yes, you're right. We don't have to get rid of any other sources. We can't, because especially oil and coal, they are the fuel for heavy industries, and they are the fuel for other energy
Absolutely.
sources. So we need them, but we have to build a matrix that is more renewable. We have to include nuclear, fossil fuels, and we have to put the renewables at least in the minimum 70% with renewables. You don't get rid of the others,
Absolutely.
you diminish them, but you
Yeah.
have to make these structures to work together. The big grids of fossil fuel energy with the small grids with renewable energy.
So with this much access to finances to build that structure in Brazil, uh, and apart from the opposition from the business angle, the traditional business people that have invested so much in the other sources, where is Brazil now in that transition?
Brazil now in that transition is very weird because we are at the same path that China was in 2016. China was at the same path, similar, not the same, similar path that Brazil was, with big installed capacity. Installed capacity means we have big matrix of renewables. So the renewables are mostly of our energy matrix, and also our electric matrix, mostly renewable. But to transform this in a transition, we have to build these small grids I mentioned before. Just like we see here, the small grids, they are operable by the final consumers. For example, here in China, you can go to any place and charge your car, charge your bike.
Yeah.
A bike, a motorbike, I mean, but a bike, for example, is not electric, but you use an app to
Yeah.
buy, to use the motorbike. You use the transport, you use the connectivity that you have with these small grids. And for example, if you have a shortage from the conventional big grids, you don't feel this, you don't have any shortage with the small grids, because the big grids, they are just one flow of energy, and they're a big loss of energy.
Yeah.
And the consumer pay for the loss, so the price is not worth it, and it's not adequate. But the small grids, they are two flow. Once the big grid furnish energy, the small grid function by themselves, and they can work connected or off grid.
Oh, okay.
So they are two flows. They don't stop furnishing energy. They are rechargeable, and they can store the energy.
Yeah.
That's the big difference.
All right. The subject of climate change,
Yes.
it's so real now, and for some developing countries, for example, back home in Nigeria, where I come from, and other developing countries, it's still not so as real, as acceptable the way it is in developed countries. And what I mean by that is it's not seen as much as a challenge. The threat, which is real actually, is not perceived like that, because of course uh, people out there still believe it's not as it's been overblown out of proportion. The subject is exaggerated. So what do you think about that?
Great question, because I'm writing an article with an expert in this matter, in this issue. She is from Shanghai, Dr. Sheng, and I write from the macro perspective, the institutional arrangement of a country, of Brazil and China, comparing the two. So this macro perspective, the actors are different. They are the big industries, the big players, the big private and the big state-owned enterprise. But in the micro level, that is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
People don't think about climate change.
Yeah.
People think about uh, cheap energy,
Absolutely.
reliable energy. For example, in Shanghai, where Dr. Sheng used to do field work, she visits and she interviews people, and they say they don't worried about climate
No
change.
worry. Yeah.
Yes, they have cheap energy from fossil fuels that the government furnishes them, so they don't want to invest in solar panels because they have to buy themselves. It's different for a school. It's different from universities, hospitals, public buildings, etc. Because the governments, the local governments, or the central government invest, and the actors are the big ones invested.
Yeah.
So in the micro level is the people, the final consumer. So they can't afford, and they can't rely on some small private companies, because since they don't have incentives from the government, they bankrupt before the time to give some maintenance. And this kind of equipment needs 10, 20, 30 years of maintenance.
Yeah.
So if people invest on this and don't have maintenance,
yeah.
they don't trust. So there are these two
So what you're saying
different
now,
levels.
So what you're saying now is at micro level, it's the same experience for citizens.
Yes.
The level of acceptance of renewable energy, regardless of the country. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
they have to invest by themselves, and the small companies don't have the power to keep working for a long time. They don't have the incentives, the money to train people to keep up with the equipment. So that's the big difficulty.
All right, let's look at the technology behind it.
Okay.
The transfer of technology, of course. Renewable energy has um, same kind of technology, yeah, which can be replicated anywhere. So talk to me about Brazil, the the technology in Brazil. Um, where is Brazil now? Is Brazil self-sufficient in technology, human capacities, to make Brazil 100% renewable energy country?
Yes. The first thing I do in my research is to map where Brazil is and where China was. Brazil is in the same point that China was in 2016, big installed capacity. We have this capacity, we have technology, it's the same, especially for solar panels. The biggest advantage of solar panels is that you use the same equipment
Yeah,
that you use for citizens, you can
yeah,
use for big buildings or for big industries, etc. Or you have some small panels, for example, as I saw in Shanghai, to furnish energy for propaganda panels, for example. Or you have this big panels installed in big buildings, just like we have around here, the buildings around here. And Brazil is very equipped with people because the money that China invests is for training people, not only Chinese people, but
yeah.
Brazilian people. So we have the technology, we have the money, we have the access to the resources, we have the resources. The problem is political.
So political leadership problem is everywhere.
Political because they are the same that do the business.
Yeah, so they don't want to get out of business, you
Yes.
know. So that's fine. Let's look at the cost of using renewable energy for an average citizen,
Okay.
as compared to fossil oil or fuel or other sources of energy. What
Okay.
do you think? Which is which is more economically better?
Undoubtedly, the renewables. Yes. The biggest and the better example I can give you is about the EVs, the electric vehicles.
Yeah.
For example, I was inserting this information just yesterday in my not only my PhD thesis, but in an article that I'm writing with Dr. Sheng.
Yeah.
In Shanghai, for example, you have an app from State Grid company, the biggest one in Brazil and around the world.
Mm.
You access this app and you see what time of the day it's cheapest to charge your car. So you go to your garage, to your charge
Yeah, charging.
equipment, or you go to the street because the equipment are everywhere, and you pay around 7 cents of yuan for 22 kilowatts.
Oh,
Uh, you pay, 7 cents of yuan for 22 kilowatts. And with 7 yuan, you drive your car for 100 kilometers.
mm.
With 7 yuan for 100 kilometers. While
If
the
you're going to
fuel,
buy
the
the fuel,
gasoline, yes,
yeah.
gasoline is around 7.79 the liter. So it's big difference. It's big difference. And,
Wow.
and you can't drive 100 kilometers.
So what should we begin to look at now? Tackling the political issue, number one, and I believe there's no much advocacy on that sense. People still don't know
Okay.
out there that
Yeah.
it's cheaper
Yeah.
to go the route of renewable energy. They still prefer the expensive traditional fossil fuel.
Okay.
So how do you think we need to begin to go about this and uh, make governments accept that? How
Okay.
do we overcome all these political institutional challenges? Then, of course, the masses out there, because there's no pressure from the masses because they don't care, they don't know. And
Yeah.
you've just said it
Yeah.
that the experience is unique everywhere, you know. So, what do you think we can do about this?
This is a case of education. You have to educate people, but you have to educate them through laws, through institutions. If, unfortunately, you have to force things, but that's the issue with the government. The government have to force things, but not as a kind of violence. You have to show that things work. For example, in Brazil, we have very modern institutional apparatus for these things to work. But political actors don't let the things go in the way it should be. But for example, in China, people can think wrongly. It's a central government, it's an authoritarian government. But my study is Brazil is de facto and a de jure federation because it's de jure because we are federation in the constitution.
Yeah,
And de facto because we have subnational levels and
yeah,
the central government has to make some bargains
hmm,
to talk to subnational levels. So
yeah.
they are equal juridically.
Oh, really?
Okay, in China, China is not de jure.
It's central.
Yeah, it's
Everything is
central
central.
government, but it's a de facto federation, and it's called authoritarianism, fragmented authoritarianism.
Mm,
So the subnational levels governments are very strong, the private actors are very strong, and the central government has to negotiate to bargain the same way you do in a federation. That's why I'm comparing Brazil. So I built this analytical frameworks for everything to say that's why I'm talking about China and Brazil. So what did China do and what is China still doing? Because you need to